Now, in Ross chapter 12, we deal with something called construct chains. Construct chains. And to begin, what I want to do is just talk about how in Hebrew, we can throw two words up side by side next to one another, and that can create an interesting kind of structure. So let me start with an expression like this. Sus David. All right? Now, these are both nouns. Sus is a noun. It means what? Horse. And David means David. Good. And when I put Sus and David together with the intention of them forming a unit and functioning as a single entity, in Hebrew, that is called a construct chain, and that's what this chapter is all about. So, Sus David is really not to be translated as horse David, but rather horse of David. When we have a construct chain where two nouns are slapped side by side together and are intended to form a unit, that is a construct chain. Now, I will often, when we are analyzing Hebrew, and we come to a construct chain, or we talk about a construct chain, I'll use the numbers 1 and 2 to label these. And I like to call them thing 1 and thing 2. Do you remember the Cat in the Hat? There were these two naughty little creatures called thing 1 and thing 2. Well, a noun is a person, place, or thing. And in construct chains, what we have are nouns put together. So thing 1 and thing 2 are noun 1 and noun 2. And I want to give you a vocabulary for how grammarians describe these sorts of construct chains and nouns. So we can call noun 1 the construct noun. All right. And thing 2 is called the absolute noun. Now, when we have an absolute noun, what we actually have is the lexical form. The lexical form and the absolute are the same thing. The absolute noun is the basic form. The construct form sometimes will be modified from the lexical form. It might be that there's a slightly different ending, or you might see a slightly different sort of set of vowels. There might be some vowel changes. And we're going to talk about how to identify those in just a little while. When people use the terms construct and absolute for thing 1 and thing 2, then what they form is a construct chain. Okay, and I'm going to abbreviate construct CST. So this forms a construct chain. Sometimes you will hear people describe thing 1 as the head noun. Okay? And thing 2 would be the genitive noun. What thing 2 is doing here is it is qualifying thing 1 in some way. Here, when I have Sus David, David is modifying or qualifying David by way of possession. Okay? So some people would describe David's role as being a genitive of possession here. Okay? Whenever you have a head noun and a genitive noun, and you're using those terms, then you might see some people refer to this as a genitive phrase. Okay? A genitive phrase. Now, you can also see the language of thing 1 being called the bound form, and the second noun being called the free form. So these are just terms all for the same thing. And people who use that language refer to the two together as a bound phrase. Thing 1 has been bound to thing 2 in an inseparable unit where the two of them have to function together as a single unit. Okay? So, we have Sus David, horse of David. In a little while, we're going to see that in an expression like this, even though I don't have the article on Sus, I could still translate this as the horse of David. So most of the time when we have a construct chain, we're going to insert the English word of between thing 1 and thing 2. All right? So let me give you another example of a construct chain. Let's take the word yad. Okay? What is a yad? Who remembers this word? We first saw it in chapter 7, I think. A yad is a hand. Remember that? So when we talked about the dual, we add ayim to a word to mean two of something. So yad became yadayim, two hands, or a pair of hands. All right. So what if I take yad and I slap it up next to the word Moshe, like this? Then what do I want to do? If I want to translate this, it's going to be the hand. And should I just say the hand Moses? No, what do I want to add here? I want to add the word of, the hand of Moses. Now here's what I want you to notice. In Yad, is this spelled exactly the same way as the lexical form Yad that you've learned? No. This has a long A in the absolute or the normal form, and in the bound form or the construct form, notice that it has a slight vowel change here. Okay? Sometimes the vowel changes will indicate that you have a thing 1, thing 2 relationship, a construct chain, and sometimes you won't be able to tell the difference, as in Sus David. The form Sus is in the construct, but that happens to be identical to the absolute form of Sus as well. Okay? So sometimes you can tell the difference, sometimes you can't. Again, we'll look at some of the ways that you will see some changes to vowels or endings in just a moment. Okay? But I just want to give you basic idea of such a thing as a construct chain. One other thing that we ought to say about this is that when a construct chain occurs, you read thing 1 and thing 2 together, those form one unit. So if I say something like, let's try this sentence. Ra'ithi means I saw. Ra'ithi. Eit Yad Moshe. What is eit doing here? Yeah, it's pointing to the fact that I have a direct object coming. That's definite. And then notice that Yad Moshe is a construct chain, so I need to hold these two together as a single unit, and together they form the direct object, right? So even though there's two words, they both function as a single unit. So I saw the hand of Moses. Okay? We are not going to separate anything here. We need to keep them together in our translation. One of the things that we're going to see is that you cannot insert anything into a construct chain. You can't break up a construct chain with other words. Okay? So once they're here, they're going to be held together, and they form an inseparable bound unit together. Okay? Now, here, the construct chain is the direct object of my verb. But I could just as well have that same construct chain functioning as the subject of a verb, or as the subject of a sentence. An example would be something like this. So here I have Yad Moshe Kavatz Am, the hand of Moses, and that's a construct chain, so I got to keep that together. This is the subject. Kavatz is my verb. Am, my direct object. The hand of Moses gathered a people. Okay? Again, just showing you that construct chains are basically going to form a single unit functioning as a noun, and any noun role a construct chain can fill. They could be subject, they could be direct objects. Construct chains could be the object of a preposition. Okay? All right. So let's talk about how we're going to be able to identify construct chains and the forms of the first noun in a construct chain. the actual construct form. And when in Hebrew we form construct chains, it's not the absolute noun that's going to change, it's the construct noun, the first noun, thing one. So what are going to be the changes to thing one, or to noun one? What are we going to see happening? First of all, you could have changes to the endings. Okay? There could be some changes to endings. Number two, you will have loss of stress. And thirdly, you could have, because of the loss of stress, changes to vowels. Okay? And we could probably put this in the other order. We probably put loss of stress first. Okay, so that's the right order. So loss of stress, changes to the endings, and this is, if applicable, we're going to see what some of the ending changes are. And then changes to vowels, again, if vowel changes can happen. Remember, there are some vowels that cannot change. Which ones are they? Which vowels are unchangeable? The historically long ones. Any other vowels could change, okay? So that's going to matter. All right, let's take a look at the forms of the construct, first of all, especially as it relates to the endings. And actually, here, before we do that, let me just make one more comment here. When it comes to loss of stress, basically the construct noun, this is it's equivalent to having a makaf attached. Do you remember how when we put a makaf on a word and attach it to another word, that the noun with the makaf right in front of it surrendered its stress to the second noun? When we put nouns in the construct state, they're going to surrender their stress to the following noun, to thing two. That's what always happens with these forms. And when I say always, take that advisedly. In language, always doesn't always mean always, does it? There's always exceptional things. But as a general rule, construct nouns lose their stress, and then this causes some vowel changes, okay? So let's look at the forms of the construct noun. And to do that, we'll look at the first handout. Here, we're dealing with just the noun sus as a model. And remember, the masculine form of sus is sus with no ending. The feminine form of sus is susa with the comma te. The shurik in the middle is historically long, so it will not change its form. That's an unchangeable vowel, all right? And what I want you to see is what happens to the forms when we put the noun in the construct state. So the absolute form of sus is sus. The absolute form of the plural for sus is susim. Okay, you already know that. The absolute feminine singular form of a female horse, a mare, is susa with a comma te, and the plural absolute of susa is susot with the holem vav tav. Now, if I want to take the masculine singular form sus and make it construct, in other words, if I want to put it in an expression like sus David, the horse of David, then what happens to it? Is there an ending on the masculine singular absolute of sus? Is there an ending here? No. This is a form with zero ending, right? So will I have an ending that I have to change to make it construct? Nope. So there's no change here, okay? No change of ending. So sus becomes sus David in the construct form. There's no change. What if David has a mare? Okay. I cannot just say susa David. Susa has to change to the feminine singular construct. How do I do that? I take the comma te, drop it off, and I add a pathak tav. So it becomes susat. Susat. Say that with me. So the mayor of David is not Susa David, but Susat David. Okay? Susat David. Look at Susim, the masculine plural. To make the construct form of the masculine plural, I can't leave the im the way it is. It will drop the im and become sereyod. A. Susim, susay. Okay? So everybody say that with me. Susay. Now, I like to call this the Canadian ending. You know why? Because Canadians are always saying a, right? Susay. That's Canadian, eh? So the Canadian ending is the masculine plural construct ending. So if I wanted to say the horses of David, I couldn't say Susim David. I'd have to say what? Susay David. Susay David. And then the feminine plural construct is the same as the feminine plural absolute. It's ot and ot. Okay? So no change there. I like to call this the Quaker ending. You ever eaten your Quaker oats? So there's your oat. All right. So where are the two places where the construct form changes its ending? It's only two places. The feminine singular and the masculine plural. Okay? Those are the only places that I have differences. All right. The zero ending form doesn't change. The oath ending is the same. Okay? So there's just two places. Now, even though I'm referring to these as the masculine and the feminine forms, keep in mind that if my form is one of those weird ones where, for example, I have, let's say I have a feminine noun that has zero ending, like ear, okay? That's not actually masculine singular. But what would the feminine singular construct form of ear look like if I wanted to say something like the city of Israel? Yisrael. What would I do? Would I change the ending if there's no ending on that form? No, I wouldn't. Okay? So this is the way ear would look in the construct. So that's feminine singular construct, okay? And that's the absolute form. So the city of Israel would be ear Yisrael. Even though this is on the masculine line, if it happens to be a feminine noun with no ending, its construct will be no ending. If it happens to be a feminine plural noun that has im for the end, like nashim, women, how would I form the plural construct of women? It would be nashe. Im would become a. All right? Likewise, if I had a masculine noun that ended with ot in the plural, like av is father, avot is fathers, what would its masculine plural construct be? It would be avot as well, okay? It would still have the ot ending. So do keep that in mind. All right, so that's the kind of ending changes we would have. Let me give you one more word that you might see quite a lot in the Hebrew Bible. It's the word Torah. Torah. What's that? Torah. Very good. How would I make this normal absolute feminine singular form of Torah construct and say something like the law of Moses? Exactly. The ah becomes at. So Torah becomes Torat. Torat. So if oops, that's not a long A. So Torat Moshe. Okay? That would be the Torah of Moses. Okay? Torat Moshe. Because of the Torat ending, one of my former professors used to refer to this as the rat ending for the feminine singular construct. The rat ending from Torah, Torat. Okay? So that helps you. You remember rats. Okay, good. So those are the endings there. In Rus 12.3 now, we deal with the matter of the vowel changes. Okay? So let's take a look at one other set of changes besides what we saw. This is number 1 on 12.3. Words that end with a segel hey become serehe in the construct. Okay? So if the absolute ends with a segel hey, serehe is what it changes to in the construct. So if we take the word machane, okay, what does machane mean? Remember machane? It's a camp, right? It's a camp. So absolute, segel hey. If I wanted to say the camp of, let's say Moab. The camp of Moab. Okay, what would happen? If I make this thing 1, thing 2, construct chain, segel hey becomes what? Serehe. Okay? So it's spelled just like that. Machane, Moab. That does not happen very frequently. Okay? Doesn't happen very frequently at all. That's really the only other ending change that happens. Otherwise, what we just went through in the handout is what you're really going to be looking for. Okay? Now, with Rus 12.4, this is where we really start dealing with the vowel changes. So let's walk through these, okay? What's going to happen here with the vowel changes is everything that we've learned up to this point is going to come together in this chapter. What do I mean? Well, here's what I mean. You learned some syllable rules. You learned, for example, the cuss rule. What does that mean? Close on accented syllables require a short vowel. You learned old preachers' sermons are long. What's that? Open pretonic syllables require a long vowel. And you learned that open and proprotonic syllables like to reduce to a vocal shava. These rules are going to be applying throughout as our vowels change. Whether they're in closed syllables or not, it's going to change. Whether they're being stressed or not, it's going to become an issue. Okay? If something becomes open and proprotonic and had a full vowel, it could reduce to a vocal shava. We also learned about red writer problems in Hebrew. What's that? You have 2 vocal shavas. Can they be side by side? Nope. What will happen? One will shoot out an I. Okay, so 2 vocal shavas. Not okay. I will shoot out one I, and the other one becomes silent, right? So I get a Keurig followed by a silent shava. There are some other situations that we learned with the red writer. That is, if I have a vocal shava followed by a compound shava, what happens there? Shoots out both I's and replaces it with a short vowel that matches the compound shava. So it becomes, like in this case, pathak followed by silent shava. Okay? One of the things that we didn't learn, but we're going to see it here, is if I have, on the other hand, a vowel under one letter followed by a compound shava under the other. Okay? I'm sorry, I've got that wrong. Hold on. If I have a vocal shava, I put that in the wrong order again. Hold on. If I have the compound shava first, followed by a vocal shava. That's something that we haven't seen before. Okay? So if I have a compound shava followed by a vocal shava, I still can't let those two be side by side. Okay? So what's going to happen here? Vocal shava is still going to shoot out two I's, but that's going to go ahead and just leave the pathak there. Okay? And then I'll get the silent shava as well. All right? So, and actually this one goes to compound shava. Okay. So these are going to be the three scenarios I have, but these are all applications of the Red Rider problem. So we're going to see that going on as well. Let's look at examples of where these things kick into place, okay?